Welcome back. I'm Pat, and this is another story from the Family Records. Every episode features a new album we randomly pull from the collection. Make sure to become part of the family by subscribing and ringing the bell. That way you never miss the needle drop. Today's band was formed in 1969 by Lowell George and Bill Payne. In 1975, Jimmy Page, the founder of Led Zeppelin, told Rolling Stone that today's group was his favorite American band. Today's album marks the band's 5th release, and despite its title, they would release 2 more studio records before disbanding 10 years after their inception. Let's drop the needle on Little Feat, the last record album. Lowell George met Bill Payne while George was a member of Frank Zappa's Mothers of Invention. The two formed Little Feat along with former Mothers bassist Roy Estrada and drummer Richie Hayward, who was from George's previous band. The name of the band came from a comment made by Mothers drummer Jimmy Carl Black about Lowell's Little Feat. The spelling of feet, F-E-A-T, was an homage to the Beatles, the Feetles. Now, there are 3 stories about the genesis of Little Feat. One of them says that George showed Zappa his song Willin', and that Zappa fired him from Mothers of Invention because he felt George was too talented to merely be a member of his band, and told him he ought to go away and form his own band. I'll save the other 2 versions for when I find another Little Feat album in the collection. Don't forget to sub to the channel so you don't miss that. Regardless of the version we believe, Zappa was instrumental in getting Little Feat a contract with Warner Brothers. If we believe the story of the band's formation that I mentioned, then it does seem like Zappa was onto something when he told Lowell Green that he needed to leave the Mothers of Invention. Little Feat's first 2 albums received nearly universal critical acclaim, and Willin' was subsequently popularized by its inclusion on Linda Ronstadt's album Heart Like a Wheel. Despite good reviews of their sophomore effort, a lack of commercial success led to the band splitting up, specifically with bassist Roy Estrada leaving the group. Little Feat would reform in 1972, adding a new bassist as well as a second guitarist and a percussionist, transforming the quartet to a sextet. The new lineup radically altered the band's sound, leaning into New Orleans funk, and leading to one of their most successful albums, Dixie Chicken. Dixie Chicken's commercial success failed to materialize into sales for the group, however, and Little Feat again disbanded in 1973, before again reforming in 1974 and releasing their 4th album, Feat's Don't Fail Me Now, that same year. That album was a studio-recorded attempt to capture some of the energy of their live shows, and it leads us into today's release, which was the band's 5th studio album, the last record album. The last record album signaled another change in Little Feat's sound, shifting from the funk sounds of their 4th and 5th albums to a heavier focus on jazz rock. Prior to the recording of the last record album, drummer Richie Hayward had a motorcycle accident, and the back cover of the last record album was decorated with copies of his many hospital bills. Also present is evidence of a late change to the running order of the tracks. The lyrics for the song High Roller were printed on the sleeve, but boxed in black lines with the words "Maybe Next Time" scrawled over them. Sure enough, High Roller was the first track on the subsequent album Time Loves a Hero. Oh, and just to be fair, the order of the tracks in the back are completely wrong also, so that's something too. The album's front cover illustration by Neon Park, as well as the title, The Last Record Album, allude to the 1971 film The Last Picture Show, with Hollywood Boulevard turned into a desert, leading to the apparent visual pun of the Hollywood sign Jell-O mold, dessert. Reviews were fair to positive when the last record album released on October 17, 1975. Writing in AllMusic at the time, critic Stephen Thomas Erlewine wrote, "For a very short album, only 8 songs, too many of the cuts fall flat. Those that succeed, however, are quite good, particularly Paul Barrere and Bill Payne's gently propulsive All That You Dream, Lowell George's beautiful Long Distance Love, and the sublime Mercenary Territory. There are enough signs of Little Feat's true character on the last record album. The 3 previously mentioned songs are essential for any Feat fan, to make it fairly enjoyable. But it's clear that the band is beginning to run out of steam. The original incarnation of the band would end in 1979 with the release of their 7th studio album, which was completed and released shortly after the death of the band's founder and frontman, Lowell George. Rest in peace. Okay, and here we go. We're rolling with the goodbye thoughts. My first thought being, hopefully that wasn't creepy that I said rest in peace. I thought I hope I'm going to be able to edit it good, but the way I did it, then I stared at the camera for a while, and I'm like, oh God, is that really creepy? So sorry if it was. Yesterday, on my notes, I forgot to talk about the challenges that I've been having doing the series recently. And I wanted to mention those really quickly just in terms of the last two, even really this record, because there wasn't a ton on this record, but there was a good amount to talk about with the band. But yeah, I had really just been running into some challenges in terms of the ease of writing some of the stories, and it was just a really good exercise. It was sort of something I was just reflecting on, and it being a great exercise for me. In terms of just having to think about the series in bigger, more expansive ways than just, okay, I'm going to do the same thing every time. Sometimes it's not going to be that straightforward. And yeah, so that was something that I had kind of struggled with, obviously as I didn't talk about, but there was a less of an output last week, and it was a combination of multiple things which I have been talking about. But part of it definitely was that there was just not an ease in terms of the writing and parsing the stories out of the information that I had been experiencing. And maybe, I had just been lucky. Maybe this will be more the norm and I have to keep being creative. Regardless, it's a really good thing, but it was just something that I wanted to talk about because, I know I had said sort of talking a bit about how much production I have had and how much stuff has come out, and I think that's really good, but it's also, I think, good to highlight sort of the not a downside is the wrong way to put it, but just some of the less positive things associated with this, and just things that I've just been struggling with anyway. So, but also how I try to always approach challenges in life and just bad things in general, where every bad thing is an opportunity. And definitely, like this album, when I first pulled it, I was kind of thinking like, oh my, I'm on a similar path again, because there's not a ton about this album. There was some good stuff about the cover, obviously, and the review of it I thought was really good and a really nice way to sort of end it, because of course it was a little bit prophetic in terms of the band. Oh, they had already broken up a couple times. Like I feel like there was some toxicity there, and especially with some of the quotes from Lowell George near the end, which I decided not to get into. But yeah, it was true, right? That I think that they sort of they were getting wobbly. So yeah, I had sort of been nervous about this album too, but actually when I sat down to write it and just did it, it really flowed quite well. So it was a really good, just a really good process, and just a really good reminder for myself of, hey, it's okay, we're gonna. This thing's still good enough that I can be creative when I have challenges. So anyway, overall, it's been hugely positive and just a good reinforcement of like, yeah, just keep going and keep attacking this thing in new ways. And yeah, this album was great today. So wanted to touch on that really quickly. Also, just in terms of my closing thoughts, I have my scripts for my main video part, and then I sort of put myself some notes, but I'm really trying to bullet point them more because I don't want to be reading off of it. I only have the notes there sort of just as mental reminders for myself, so I don't come here and, I always find when I'm editing that I will be reflecting on what I spoke about, and I'll be like, oh, why didn't I say this thing? I was thinking about saying this thing. I can't believe I didn't mention that. That was why I talked about the challenges that I've been having, because that was something I meant to mention, like I said yesterday, and just totally forgot about. So anyway, yeah, just try to really be transparent with it and thoughtful about it, and but then also have those bullet points to mentally jog for myself, so I'm not just sitting here like umming and ahhing the whole time. But yeah, also just a small thing that you'll notice in terms of the song stories and the full videos have been running, like the full videos are paired with the shorts the next day. So you get the full video breaking down the story of the album and then the short with snippets of the album. So you get like a little sampler pack to inspire you to go listen to the music yourself, to buy the album, to get a vinyl player, whatever. But then the song stories are this nice addition that we have of the individual stories of songs on those albums. And sometimes I won't have any, and sometimes I'll have a surplus. So what I've decided to start doing is just teasing basically trying to hit as close as possible as we can to 2 videos a day every weekday, and teasing out song stories so they don't have, they'll run in parallel in terms of you'll never see a song story come out before the full video of the album that it's part of. But you may see song stories come out. So like I have song stories for the Mamas and Papas. Now with my schedule that I'm going to have, by the time you see those song stories, it'll be Thursday, and this review will already be out. But there's no song stories in this album. So anyway, that's just, there are basically 2 series running in parallel, and one series impacts the other, but that's it. The song stories can basically run as they want to freely to complete our programming schedule. And I think this is, as I'm starting to add more things in here, this is what I'm going to be trying to do, where I'm going to try to figure out that schedule and have a good set of content that then I can fill all the spaces with. So, just going back to that TV brain. So I'll get all my chunks, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to line up my blocks through the week. So anyway, I'm sure that was like completely mindless and boring for you, so I apologize. But all that to say, my quick thoughts on this record, because I've sort of been getting away from that a little bit, and I haven't meant to, and I'm just actually thinking about it right now that I'm like, oh, I didn't really talk about that on the last review or this one, just with a little gap there. And anyway, just good things for me to consider, but it's fine. It honestly didn't stand out for me too much. I didn't have any particular nostalgia about it. I think my parents both really enjoy this band, so I feel like I probably heard a bunch of their albums over time, but yeah, didn't really do anything for me. So they're okay. They're more interesting in terms of the dynamics of the band, I think, for me anyway, than the actual music, at least on this album. But I think there's probably going to be, I'm almost certain, there's more Little Feat albums in there. So I'll be listening to more, and we'll see if my opinion on them evolves over time. But for now, they're okay. I would not add it to my streaming library, and I'm not going to. All that to say, I would love to know what you think about the album or Little Feat. If you like the review, leave a like. Throw a comment down there. Let me know what you think about all this. And don't forget to sub and ring the bell if you're new around here. Grow the family. Come join us. Love you all. See you Friday with another record, and we'll have a bunch of stuff in between.